We need to think about a meeting that you could have a meeting that day, February 9th, which is a Thursday, or and we would schedule interviews with the full board the following week. Sometime on the 15th, the 16th, or the 17th. So that can happen. So that's one thing to think about, the timing. If we don't do it then, if you don't want to do it that quickly, we can wait and you can meet the week of the 15th. So, I'm just throwing a date out there, February 16th, you can meet. And then we set an interview date for March 1st. After the break, because I don't think we can do it. I think you're going to have a problem with people's availability if you try to schedule during the February break. That's my take. I'm around, doesn't matter to me, but I think it's probably a problem for some of you with families, and it may be a problem getting candidates in too for interviews at that time. So I know I'm throwing a lot of dates at you, but I'll say that again. So it's special meeting maybe on the 9th. You interview the following week, or you have a special meeting on the 16th and you interview on March 1st. So those are the two time frames. Of course, we don't know until we know how many candidates will be moving forward to you, how much time you're going to need. But let's just make an estimate of say you had 3 candidates, maybe you start interviews, your first interview at 4:00, and I'd like to give an hour of interview, half an hour of processing. So you have your last interview at 7, deliberation. So you're looking at a chunk of time of about 5 hours, probably, is my guess right now, is what you need to think about as a board. And again, that's the full board going through that process. The other thing we talked about, and you don't have to make this decision right now, but we'd want to make it the next time we meet, is what level do you want of stakeholder involvement? So one of the things we can do is, if let's just say the interviews were March 1st in the beginning at 4:00, you could either do a site visitation day the day before and have the candidates visit the schools, set up some sessions with central office folks, with a parent group, with teachers, with administrators. So I could set up a whole schedule for you. So maybe there's 4 or 5 rotations with that candidate, with the candidates. They're all asked a couple of questions, and then I'd get a feedback form from those groups, and I'd have that information to share with the board when they get to deliberation after they've had their interviews. So if you want to do something like that, again, I'd like to start to get my head around that, because it'll be a crazy day if we do it all in one day, but we could, but it would be intense. It's probably better to try to do it a day before. Gives me some time to pull things together for you. But again, so much of that is going to depend upon how many finalists are we bringing to you. How challenging will that be? So you have 2 things I kind of need some guidance from you on right now. I want to know how quickly you want to move. Do you want to go with that 9th as the day to have that special meeting? Do you want it the week after? So in one of these scenarios, you might be ready to make an offer. You might be ready to make an offer before February break, and the other, it will be after. Okay?
Great, thank you. Oh my gosh, so much to think about. We have a question from Nancy Pedrick.
You answered one of my questions, was how many candidates. I suspect there could be more than 3, but 3 is probably optimal. And are the interviews in person with us, or is it done by Zoom?
The interviews are in person with you.
Okay, so if it's probably going to be impossible with work schedules to get everybody.
Yep.
So is there an optimum number of people that need to be there at that time?
Well, you should have a quorum.
Okay.
You should have a quorum. So, you know, what I can do, I guess right now, if you give me some guidance on whether, you know, that when that special meeting is going to be, when you want to know who those, you know, make that a public, that because it becomes public at that point, then what I would do. So say Nancy, for example, you say, okay, Jackie, we want to have our special meeting on February 9th. And then we'll make it public and we'll know who we're going to interview. What I'll do after that is I will send a scheduling poll to all of you and say, here are some possible dates and times, what works for you. So and it won't work for everybody, but we'll probably get pretty close. So we'll do the best we can. And so that's kind of how we'll proceed with that. And of course, at the same time, I'll be trying to coordinate that with whomever we want to interview to make sure that works. But the part, so we can work on that details. The part I'm curious about now too, though, from the whole board is, do you want to do that visitation? Do you want to have other folks interacting and get some feedback that I can then funnel to you about the candidates? If you want that piece, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. I just, you know, kind of want to start planning for that.
If I'm still on, I would say yes, I would definitely hope that there would be visitation. That's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Caitlin Gould.
I had to turn my microphone on. So I'm just curious, as a parent and fellow community member, can I just put in the recommendation that there's either a community group that could be part of this to meet the candidates, or a small parent group? I know that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Rebecca.
I think, Jackie, you answered some of my questions, and that is, how do you engage if you know, the stakeholders, and how you would do that? I think that it is important to have, in addition to staff, I don't know how you want to do that, but I would like to see stakeholders from the community participate in this. I would like to hear their voice. That's my feeling. So I appreciate that you've already pointed out there is a process, and I just need to know if you want it, and this is what I would do. But thank you.
And Bill.
I'd like to make a suggestion now that I kind of have my head wrapped around the process. I suggest we have a meeting as a whole board on the 9th. And then that gives us the entire week of the 13th to begin to organize and have whatever site visits, parental group meetings, and things like that, and then plan to have whole board interviews, most likely the week of February 27th. I'd love to have it done by March, but at the same time, I think it's really important to have a community and district stakeholders have that time to participate in setting aside an entire week of the 13th. I think will allow that. So that's my suggestion.
So Bill, are you saying have those type of experiences that week of the 13th, and then you
Yes.
guys interview after break? Okay, got it. No, I think that's, you know, probably makes sense. Okay.
And Hudson.
I really think there should also be a small group of high school students that meet with the candidates as one of the stakeholder groups during the week of the 13th, if that's what happens. Just want to voice my support for that.
Here, here.
Great, thank you. Anne Marie?
I would also say that I would like to have the stakeholders, the meeting, like a students group, a parents group, a teachers group, a community members group. We did it for the principal of Weathersfield, and we got some really good feedback from those that helped us to make our decision. We really loved hearing from the kids. I think that group is incredibly important. So I would definitely want to see that happen, and I think we owe it to the community and to the seriousness of the position to do that.
And just historical, when we have had our previous interviews for superintendent, we have had community, parent and community as a group, teachers, staff, and students. So that is something that we have done in the past, so this would not be, and I don't see that this would be any different. Let me see, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Oops.
Now we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, here I am. Okay, I just wish to point out a couple of other things that are happening in that same time frame. One is the screening of No Small Matter, and the question and answer session is next Tuesday. Also, the week of March 1st is the week that we have all of our district annual meetings. And so that, just putting it out there, that creates a little bit of, especially for parents on the board, it creates a little bit of diciness as far as meetings overload.
Davis.
Well, I initially wanted to voice my kind of adding to the consensus that we should be doing as much stakeholder feedback as possible. I think it is really important in this process, but everybody's illustrated that pretty well. And I was thinking the same thing you were, Elizabeth, though, that the first week or the last week in February and the beginning of March is extremely busy already.
Yeah.
Is it possible to kick that out maybe one more week?
Like after town meeting?
Yeah, the week of
After
town meeting?
the elections?
Oh,
Yeah.
Because then,
that's the problem.
yeah, so we either, it would have to be after town meeting and after all of the boards have reorganized.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the SU board reorganize.
Yeah.
Or we have a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
And sometimes, as a board member and active community members, we unfortunately can find ourselves with a lot of meetings. And
That's fair.
yeah.
Thank you for that.
sorry. Yeah.
No, I didn't, I thought far out, but you were thinking further out, so thank you.
And I just wanted to add too, it's hard, candidates, when you have 3 or 4 weeks from between interviews, that's going to be challenging.
Right.
So I don't think that's ideal.
So when is No Small Matter?
A week from tomorrow, on the 8th.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, yeah, so the 9th isn't that.
Or not, yeah.
Um,
The 7th.
Wait, which day is it? The 8th. It's the 8th. Wednesday, the 8th.
So let me throw out an option here, is that it may be possible, and we could always throw out a Survey Monkey or something to see if there is a quorum available to at least start some of the final interviews during February break, and maybe one or two of the candidates may be available to do an interview during that week. I mean, I'm not going anywhere, but if that's possible, then we may be able to split it so that we lighten the load of the last week in February. But I agree with Amy. We don't want to put this out too far because we get into the mess of board switches and reorganization. And I think we want to definitely finish this up before that happens.
Yeah,
But
I think
I'm willing to do during February break, and maybe there's enough of us who can. And so, I mean, let's just see.
Yeah. Bill, I can easily add a few of those dates and we see what happens when I do the scheduling poll.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should at least look at that week, because I mean, I know I also am not going anywhere that week, so, no, might surprise us.
Okay, are there any other, so I know our information meeting is
March
March
1st.
1st.
Yep.
Heartland, when is your information meeting?
We're the 31st, right? No,
28th, isn't it?
28th. Sorry, wrong month. I was looking at the Tuesday.
Okay, so
28th.
28th is Heartland and Weathersfield?
We're Saturday the 4th, I'm pretty sure. I double check that. I don't have it on my calendar for some reason, which is really bad. But I'm pretty sure it's the 4th at 10:30. Voting is on the 7th, right? If voting is on the 7th, then we're definitely the 4th. We're always the Saturday before.
So our regularly scheduled supervisory union meeting is February 27th. We could have that as an interview session.
It's the one we were gonna do with, the VSBA consultant.
That's right. Ah, okay.
But we can bump, if that's the date that makes sense. I didn't know about all these other complications. We can bump the 27th. I mean, we might have to move that. And maybe it'll make more sense to have that after the whole new board is seated,
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I was
yes,
gonna say.
yes.
you know? So that's something that we can have some flexibility with, because I'm wondering too, now listening to all of you, is the 27th date that we want to look at final interviews and try to get all the stakeholder stuff done the week or the 2 weeks before that. Yeah.
I like that plan.
Yes.
Okay.
If we can pull off. And I believe in us.
What's that?
And I believe in us.
Yes, I believe we can do this. Okay.
How are we going to get it out there to the community and stuff that their advice is requested?
What I would do is I'll come to you on the 9th. If you do vote to have a special meeting on the 9th, I'll come to you with a draft proposal of what it might look like to involve the stakeholders. And then at that time, I mean, I'm not going to know how to connect with your different groups of people and who you want, and any specifics on that. So we'll have to all talk and say, well, how are we going to do that? Like, how are we going to organize that? I'm going to need some support from folks on the board with that organizing.
Okay. We can do that. So, do you need us to agree? Let me see, February 9th is a Thursday. Does anyone have a conflict with February 9th?
Looks good to me.
Depends on the time.
would be in the evening. Jackie, like, say 6:30, is that?
That's fine. February 9th at 6:30. And of course, if something goes south with our screening process, we'll let you know and we'll have to change that, but we can shoot for that right now.
Is that, and that's in person,
Um,
or can we do it remotely?
So that could be a hybrid meeting, correct, Jackie?
I definitely think so. I don't think you have a need to do any, yeah, I think you can do a hybrid meeting on that. That shouldn't be a problem at all.
Okay, great. So unless I hear someone saying, no, and then again, you know, it's having a quorum of the board on Thursday the 9th, although we would like to have as many as possible because we are determining who the main interviewees will be. Thank you, Jackie. Is there anything more that you need?
No, but I guess I'll need to come back around with you regarding the, if this board has interest in that equity awareness and building commitment training. And if you do, we'll need to look at some dates maybe in March. So I'll need some guidance on what might work for the board. So I know maybe this board will not be the same exact board, but you could still, it would be good for me to know if this board does have interest and wants to proceed with that, because then we can start to work on a date.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I was looking forward to the 27th being that, but given other schedules, I think we need to postpone that.
Yep, got it. That's fine. We'll keep working on it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you. I have my marching orders.
Okay,
I'll see some of you
Thank you, Jackie.
tomorrow. Yeah, bye-bye.
bye-bye. Rebecca?
I just wanted clarification on when No Small Matter will be screened. Is that the 7th or the 8th?
That is
Sorry, I forgot. I apologize. That is Wednesday, the
Thanks.
8th.
What's the timing of that?
We've lost your sound, Elizabeth.
Hello, can you hear me? The film itself will go for 74 minutes, and then we'll have questions and answers with the director and one of the teachers in the movie or the film.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on. We have our administrative report.
All right. So we'll get right to it. We came back from the holiday break. This seems like so long ago, but we haven't seen each other for a while. We came back from the holiday break with a teacher in service on January 3rd, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best plan because Angie spent a fair amount of vacation preparing because it was the day after the break.
Because they forget
Yeah.
what's happening. It's really hard to
So,
set that up against
a long break like that.
Mhm.
But it really was a great training. It was our Leader in Me Core 2 training for most staff, K-8. And it focused on the 4 disciplines of execution, which is really, discipline 1 is focusing on the wildly important. So you'll see WIG, which stands for wildly important goal. Acting on the lead measures that are going to help us reach that goal, keeping a compelling scorecard or scoreboard, and then creating a cadence of accountability. So teachers were engaged in training at Weathersfield. We had one at Albert Bridge and one in Heartland, I believe, across the SU. So we separated middle level and K-5, which worked out pretty well. As you can see here, some teachers, after the training, got right to work and started doing some goal setting work with students. And we know that really is an important strategy for student success, setting goals and working towards goals. So some teachers started talking about goal setting with their kids. And as you've heard me say before, our academic goal this year as a supervisory union is in the category or the realm of foundational reading. We've done our data dive and we know that that's where we need to focus some energy and effort. And so staff and students are setting goals and lead measures in that realm, reading foundational skills. And you'll see there in the middle, a student who is keeping a leadership portfolio. In that portfolio, it's almost like a little mini PLP. It's like all about me. This is who I am, what my strengths are. Here's my goal. Here's how I'm going to keep track. And that's very private to the student, and they work on that, keeping track of those things. And then we are posting in our schools the public scorecards, which are really focusing on growth goals. So every student has a growth goal that they can meet, and we're keeping track, not individually in public, but as a class, on how we're doing towards those goals and celebrating our successes. So our teachers have come up with some pretty creative ways to show that. You can see the climb to New Heights Mountain. We've got some on the next slide, another WIG mountain, and the picture on the right is the kindergarten in Weathersfield. So they've got the bus that's moving along. That's so creative, yeah. And they're working collectively on sight words. So, which is a very appropriate kindergarten early literacy skill. So they embraced it. As you heard Angie talk a little bit earlier, we did receive a benchmark assessment grant, and one of the needs that we really have identified as part of our quest to become a data-driven decision-making schools and system is really having the tools that we need to do that. So we are piloting STAR assessments in classrooms across the SU with teachers who have volunteered to be part of that pilot. So they took STAR assessment. I think there's about 13. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
Across the SU, some took TMP, which is the current assessment we have in place, and some
that is
track my progress. Yes. Yep.
And is STAR an acronym? Oh, no.
It doesn't look like it. I'm on their website. Yeah. It doesn't look like it's an acronym. It just is STAR assessments.
And this is a tool. STAR assessment goes a little deeper. It really helps you break down where students are falling down in standards, groups, kids. It's pretty dynamic tool, and it can help us progress monitor. So really show the kids are making progress along the way. So you'll hear more about it. Teachers will get together and talk about how it went and what the positive aspects are, where the assessment doesn't meet our needs. We'll come back to you with more information. Rebecca has a question.
Yeah,
You want me to stop? Rebecca?
Sure.
Christine, I was just going to ask you, will the STAR assessment be used in addition to the other?
No.
Okay. So
Great question. It will replace it if that's what the committee decides. It will replace Track My Progress. All right.
So, I'm sorry, I've
Yeah,
got a
go ahead.
question. So if you're piloting it in some classrooms
Mhm.
and you're not doing it with Track My Progress, then what happens to the progress of Track My Progress in those classrooms if it winds up that you're not going to use STAR?
So I think what you're asking me is those classrooms that did not take Track My Progress and engaged in STAR assessment.
Yeah.
We won't have that information that would have been generated by Track My Progress for those particular classrooms. And you're absolutely right, we won't. But because we do Track My Progress 3 times a year, you know, we'll get assessment data from those classrooms in the spring. Does that make sense? So they'll be some classrooms have missed the testing for Track My Progress for the winter application of that and did STAR assessment instead as part of the pilot process.
Some teachers did choose to do both the STAR and the TMP for their students. They wanted that comparable data, but they did not have to choose that.
What's the fraction of teachers who did that?
I do not know.
And we can certainly find out.
How many teachers did you say are doing?
I want to say it was roughly 13 across the SU.
Yeah,
That's
I
just
think
coming to
that's-
my brain.
Is that in all 4 schools?
I believe it
Yeah.
was, yeah.
Brittany?
Oh, Brittany,
Brittany?
she's here. She's running this pilot, so she can answer all these questions.
Yeah, I can help a little bit with some of these questions. Hold on, let me get all my earpieces in. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we had it was about 15 teachers from across the SU that did it. And we even include some interventionists and some special educators because we wanted to get that perspective as well. The STAR, I'd say of those, probably a third of them decided to do both TMP and STAR. But not every single one of them did both math and ELA, for example. It kind of depended on, teachers just used their best judgment based on what the students could handle. Some kids were like, yeah, I definitely want to do both. Let's do this together, and other students, we didn't want to overtest either. So we kind of wanted a little bit of a balance there. But regardless, we have a data day coming up on February 7th for our half in-service day, and all the pilot teachers are coming. If they have a counterpart that did TMP and did not do STAR, those people are coming as well, so that we can really dig in and look at and do some comparisons between both. And just to go back to the question about the longitudinal data. So Christine's right. If we didn't want to stress out our teachers, so we did not require that they do both assessments. So with that being said, if we go with STAR, then we would retest those students with STAR in the spring. So we would have comparable data that's starting already with those pilot students. If they're doing TMP and they missed it and we decide we don't go with STAR, then everybody would do a TMP in the spring. So we would pick right back up and just continue on like what we were doing before. Another benefit to STAR that we are piloting, they have another component, which is called curriculum-based measures, CBMs. It's very much like an assessment called DIBELS, which assesses the kind of the fine details of reading. So we decided that we wanted to pilot that as well because Fountas and Pinnell does not align with the science of reading. And a lot of our teachers are really wanting to look more in depth at what are the skills that our students need within reading and how can we assess those individually. So the CBMs are also a dyslexia screener, and those teachers in K through 4 who would have given Fountas and Pinnell took a break from Fountas and Pinnell this time around and are doing the STAR CBMs. So we're collecting that data and we'll look at that as well. So far, the teachers seem to absolutely love both components of the STAR assessment. What I like about it in particular, compared to Track My Progress, is it drills down into the data, allows you to drill down quite deep including to the level of the standard. So you can go in and say, okay, this is the standard I want to look at. How many of my students did really well with that standard, and how many do I really need to work on? You can set goals right within the platform as well that you can track student progress. It's also a progress monitoring tool. So while it's nationally normed 3 times a year, you can give it as often as you would like. It's about a 20-minute assessment per subject. And you can do the same thing with the CBM. So we can see progress in between those testing windows for those that we want to do that with. So if interventionists wanted to give that assessment more often, they could. I think I covered it all, maybe.
There's a parent portal. Yeah, there's a parent portal where parents can go in. Brittany, do you want to talk about the parent portal a little bit?
I don't know a whole lot about it yet, because we wouldn't be rolling that out quite yet anyway, since this data is very preliminary and, you know, our students are kind of getting used to it and things like that. But hopefully that would be something we'd learn about if we decide to adopt, so that we're ready to do that first thing in the fall.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Thank you, Amy. A couple of questions I have. I'm wondering, what have you done to sort of notify parents that you're in the process of changing up how you're assessing students? And I'm only asking that because I would imagine that if you've been talking to a parent and you're using Track My Progress, and if you're now thinking of maybe switching, I'm trying to find out if you're keeping parents abreast of the sort of changes that you're just transitioning into. It sounds like a wonderful program, and that's great. But I'm just wondering how are the parents being kept abreast of this? Because it's important for the teachers to find it user-friendly, but also the parents need to know how are you explaining to them how their children are doing.
Sure. So Christine has been putting it in her newsletters ever since we started the pilot, that just says, hey, there are a couple groups that are going to be doing this. Some of the teachers have reached out to parents if they have a student that's involved in the assessment. In terms of after the assessment is over, if at some point in time they do have parent reports, we have kind of gone back and forth on whether we feel like this first round is the right time to give that parent report and send it home without any sort of training for our parents or any sort of information on it. On top of the fact that since it is a pilot, you know, some of the work that we did with students was really, okay, how do you take this assessment? How is it different from Track My Progress? What are some components of that? So it's also training our students a little bit. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. However, with the if parents were to ask, or as part of our conferences, we certainly have that information readily available. And I'd say, just based on talking with teachers here and there, the scores for the most part align for most students. There are some outliers, align with Track My Progress. However, with the caveat that the STAR screener assesses significantly more standards than Track My Progress does. So Track My Progress, in STAR, when they give a question, it might be assessing multiple standards, versus Track My Progress gives a question and it's only assessing one standard. And so they get through a lot less standards per assessment.
I think maybe I can help clarify Rebecca's question.
Sure.
These are assessments. These are assessments more for the teachers. These aren't, as a parent, these aren't assessments like TMP. Parents kind of barely notice unless they specifically ask for them. It's not your standards progress that you get on your report card. It's just an internal assessment to see how the class is doing. And from the parent standpoint, I guess, at least for me, and I think for a lot of others, it's not as critical and it's not part of their standards-based assessments for their grades.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Nikki. And I think, thank you for clarifying that. So with Track My Progress, STAR, any of those assessments, they are just a very, very short snapshot of what a student is capable of to give us some very basic information. It also gives us information on kind of class-wide trends that we use to look at curriculum. It gives us district-wide trends and things of that nature. So it's certainly when we present any of that information to parents at conferences, let's say, it is just such a small part of what makes up a student's learning. It is not, an assessment that this defines how your student is doing in school, for example. It would, however, look at it and say, oh, I see this student struggled a little bit with this one standard. Let's do a few more things. Let's try to do some practice. Let's reassess using some curriculum measures in the classroom and make some decisions from there.
My other question was, how long have we been using Track My Progress? I just didn't know.
I believe it's since, does 2013 sound right, Angie?
Yeah.
So it's been quite a long time. There have been minimal updates done to the system, and some of the updates, unfortunately, that were done have made the system significantly harder to navigate for teachers and to pull out the information that they need. So with that, we kind of started looking at what are some of the other options that we might have. And STAR is certainly an assessment that it's recommended to use by the state. That's why one of the reasons we qualified for this grant. Lots of local schools use the assessment, including Hartford. So I see Bill has his hand up too. So I'm sure he can help me navigate some of this. I I only know what I know from very little experience with STAR so far. But yeah, so we have used TMP for quite some time.
Thanks, Brittany.
Davis?
So, and I appreciate getting so deep into this. It sounds like, made a good case for why this is a good idea and the added features to it, and being able to assess more than one subject area in one question makes a lot of sense. You brought up the parent portal. Is that a feature that differentiates STAR from Track My Progress? That's just not available in Track My Progress?
Yeah, definitely. It is not available in Track My Progress at all. There's nothing like that. In fact, there's not even parent reports that you can print out that are easy for parents to read. Even just one parent report that I noticed from STAR, it had just the basic information that they need. It had QR codes where parents could click on it to get more information about what the results mean. I mean, it's just very, I was really impressed with that part of it, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks.
Bill?
Finding a local assessment is always a very difficult balancing act. And the simple fact that, there are much more comprehension programs out there. For example, MAP testing. It is really a very complete. The issue with MAP testing, it takes students a long time to do it. And it's very difficult to train staff to be able to understand what it is. And basically what happens is that it's so complex, most people don't end up using it. And that's what Hartford did when we piloted STAR. And STARS tends to be a nice middle ground. It's a fairly short assessment. It is an adaptive assessment that is multi-session adaptive, which is very nice. And it's fairly easy for staff, students, and parents to understand the results. But like anything, coming up with a local assessment system is really a tough balancing act.
Thank you, Bill. Caitlin Gould?
Yes, thank you, Amy. So my question is, as a parent, I have found it frustrating when asking, teachers for results and how they're using it for my child in particular, in her continued learning. I guess my question would be with when you're looking at stars and using this pilot, what qualities or measures are you going to be looking at when deciding if to move forward with it or to continue with Track My Progress? I've already heard a lot of pros, I guess, to the stars assessment. So I guess just wondering what are those measures and criteria that you'll be deciding on for this?
It's a really great question and actually a very long answer. So I don't know that if we want to get into all of the nitty-gritty details, but we have, I sat down with a team of our MTSS coordinators and our curriculum team the other day, and we mapped out all of that criteria so that our staff on February 7th can go in and they can analyze and compare each of the components that we kind of said, this is what we want to see in assessment. And they can compare STAR and Track My Progress, whether they're comparing because their students took both this time, or whether they're comparing the fall TMP that they used and the winter STAR assessment. So some of the criteria are alignment to the standards is huge, accessibility for teachers, navigation for students, the extent of the data reports. Some of it is the information that it gives you for like your instructional planning, so not only do you have the data, but now is the data usable, and what suggestions are given by the assessment based on the data you got. STAR uses something called focus skills. So what are the skills, the actual skills that a student needs to develop? They have, so it's, what about the administration went well for you, compared, and there's all sorts of details within each component of the administration of that test that we're going to be comparing. I hope that was a very brief summary of what we're looking at, but hopefully that answered a little bit of your question.
Thank you. If we can
We'll
continue
go on.
with,
Yeah.
thanks.
You'll hear more about STAR, sure. Just to update, we are going forward with the middle school caregiver discussion circles, which is a collaboration between Windsor Southeast and Mount Prescott Knee Prevention Practice. We're going to have our first circle on February 15th. It'll be just a remote meeting. That was what the feedback we received from people that participated in the interest survey. And at that meeting, we'll review the data that we collected from that initial survey on topics for discussion, and we'll set an agenda for the follow-up meeting in March. So just a follow-up on that. We're excited about that. People seemed interested, so.
Great.
Just to keep you updated, this Bureau Veritas North America, BVNA, has been retained to complete a facility condition assessment and an energy audit in all our schools. Heartland completed theirs in December. We don't have the results yet, but every school's on the docket, and that's happening across the state. So we'll share that information out when we have it. Equity audit update. We are in phase 3. We planned with Insight Education right when we came back from the break. We're going to have 15 total focus groups or interviews during phase 3. They'll involve school leadership, staff, secondary students, family and caregivers, and board members. So the interviews have actually started, and the groups have started. They should be completed by February 10th, with some additional time added on if needed. And then Insight will get to work writing the final report, which will take 3 to 4 weeks to complete, and then we can talk about how we're going to dig into that data and roll it out to the communities. So COVID numbers, I just wanted to keep you updated. We have seen a bit of an increase in our cases recently.
Is this staff and students
It
both?
is. It's staff and students, yes. So I think people are being diligent about washing their hands and trying to stay healthy and staying home when they're sick. And this is not, this is across the state. So we'll keep an eye on it. We talked about this a little bit, and I think we're going to adjust that February meeting, and we can come back to dates on when that will work. So I will skip over that, but it sounds like a wonderful opportunity. I think you probably know this, but I just wanted to let you know that H42 Governor Scott signed on the 25th, which allows these meetings to happen remotely until, thank goodness, right? Until July 1st of 2024. It allows Australian ballot and annual meetings to be electronic as well. And it does change some language in the warning around the increase in the per pupil spending costs. So that language is coming off the warning next year. It's too late for us this year because we've already signed the warning. And I know maybe Elizabeth next month will do a little legislative update for us if there's time.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Larry is on his way. His daughter had a game. But he's texting me that he's on his way, and he was going to give the quarterly report. And he said it's in the portal for you to look at, and he's happy to answer any questions. But overall, I think we are in good shape when we look at the numbers for quarter two. So I expect him to come through the door. No, how did that happen? We're just talking about you.
Yes, they were.
I didn't really give them much information, just that things look good and the information's in the portal, and you're happy to answer questions.
Yeah, if you have any questions, but basically it's all there and we're in the black.
We're in the black.
And things continue as they are.
Excellent. We like that. All right. I do want to pull up the draft calendar for you. Let me click on it here. So this has, just make sure I have the right tab. Hold on one second. Okay, so this is a calendar that, and it is in the portal, so you can see it a little bit better. That was created by the Southeast superintendents. They get together and they look at tech center schedules and calendars and try to come up with a calendar that's in alignment for all the SUs in the Southeast region as much as possible. It went to union leadership, which brought it to their membership. It's been to the administrative team. There's nothing hugely significant, I don't think, to bring up, except we did learn that having an in-service the day after the holiday break might not be the best plan, so we spaced that out. Happy to take questions from the board if there are any, but it's gone back and forth a few times with union leadership and administration.
Yeah, I don't want to open up a big can of worms, but one thing I have heard from the general population is the question, will we ever get back to building snow days into the standard schedule?
We have not talked about that, Mark. Do you have any insights on why people like that method? Amy, it looks like you do.
Yeah, from what I've heard, it just seems easier for parents to scramble and adjust for extra daycare at the very end of the year than it is to cancel a family trip that's scheduled for the immediate end of school, or you have family coming in for graduation. So it just seems like if we ever run longer because of snow days, it seems to be more of an inconvenience than trying to deal with getting out a few days earlier.
Gotcha. Amy, did you want to share?
So both of my kids went K-12 here, and the entire K-12 of both of them, if there was a snow day, that day was added to the end of the year. We never, at least here in Windsor, we never had snow days built in. And there was one year that we did have so many snow days that we we polled the community and they agreed to give up some days, the April break. And we also did a very controversial decision, 2 years, that we had school for a half day on Memorial Day, and it was focused all on Memorial Day, including kids coming down and attending the parade. So we've never, I do not recall any year that there was a built-in snow days to the calendar.
Okay, thank you.
And Bill?
Yeah, if we were going to start doing something that, I mean, we would have to plan because years in the head to try it because it would involve changes to the contract, as well as budgeting consideration for the busing company of any other services that we contract out with. I mean, if we want to go in that direction, which I don't suggest, it would be, I don't know, a logistical nightmare. I don't know, Christine, was that something that happened in New Hampshire? Is that a New Hampshire thing?
Did a long time ago, and then it was removed.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of what I
Heartland,
remember.
Heartland used to do it.
Well, that's Heartland. Oh, come on. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just,
See-
yeah,
Back when
Do you
dinosaurs
remember
roamed
the-
the earth, New York did it as well.
yeah.
Christine, I feel like it was maybe right before you started or right when you started, we had a revolt because the teachers were required to work 3 more days than everybody else because we had built-in snow days and didn't have any snow days that year.
In my experience, if they're built in, if you don't have the snow days, you get out earlier.
Yeah, that was not the case.
Yeah, but, it was not the case?
They were
Oh, well, I
really
can see why
mad.
they would be
I
angry.
remember real anger.
So, this is a draft. It will have to be approved. We can put it on items for action next month. People want to talk more about it. Does that make sense? And then it should be approved by February. So, we'll put that on. Okay. So let me go back to, I think that is the last item in my report. So Angie is going to do her curriculum
So-
report. You're going to share your.
Christine, you just said something. Let me clarify. It should be approved by February or during February. If it needs to be approved by February, then we should probably vote on it tonight.
A few more hours.
I mean, if the board's ready to vote on it tonight, that's great. I think we should have it approved
Are
in
there,
February.
are there any real changes that the board can make?
I don't recommend you make any changes.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just a formality to kick it
Just
out
a
a month, and it's not
formality,
gonna
yeah.
change, we may as well vote on it tonight.
I make a motion to approve the calendar as it stands.
Second that motion. Yes.
Thank you, Davis. Thank you, Bill. We could do it right now. Why don't we
Want to
do
do it
it
right now?
right
All
now?
righty.
Yes.
You got it. Thank you. That would be great.
Not
Sure.
even as an item for action.
Shorten the
I'm
future
going to
agenda.
start in the room. Elizabeth,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
and let me see, Anne Marie,
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, didn't hear myself there. I just knew I'm a B.
Colleen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye. Oh, not one.
I can't hear you guys again.
Bill,
Aye.
and that is
Thank you.
Okay, it has been approved. Thank you.
Amy, I did, you hear me, you did hear me say aye.
Oh, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now it's unanimous.
I'm hoping my audio will play. Hello, everybody. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the plans that guide the work in our supervisory union. Hi, I'm Angie Ledoux. I'm the Director of Curriculum and the Federal Grants Manager. The purpose of this presentation is to ensure that our stakeholders have access and information to the following plans: the strategic plan, the 2 COVID-19 plans, the continuous improvement plan, to understand the funding sources connected to those plans, and finally, the accountability measures related to those plans or how we engage our stakeholders. You can find all these plans on the curriculum and instruction site from the WSESU menu. So if you go to the WSESU site, you will see that there is a menu that has our SU in it. And going there, you can find the link to the curriculum website, curriculum and instruction, and that'll take you right to the curriculum site, which has all of the plans listed right there. So when we're done with tonight's presentation, or you're watching this video at another time, you can go there and find all those plans. So first off, I want you to know that all the plans I'm discussing tonight, along with much more information, can be found on the curriculum site. You can find that site by going to where I just told you, and I'm repeating myself, and this is so hard. The strategic plan identifies our priorities for the years FY21 and through FY24. The strategic plan has goals, objectives, and strategies. Goals are our overarching focus areas. Objectives are the results we will create to support a particular goal, and strategies are the specific actions that we take to create the results. I will briefly review the goals and objectives. For more information, you can of course go to that website I mentioned earlier. The highlighted objectives indicate those objectives whose strategies are being addressed this year. So in goal area 1, student success and engagement, our objectives include learning framework, an assessment system. This year we're piloting a benchmark assessment tool that will help us identify student learning gaps and develop learning plans in accordance with that data, an extended learning opportunities inventory, student voice and choice. This year, that work includes our Leader in Me work, our classroom mission statements, and student leadership roles in the classrooms and throughout their buildings, flexible pathways, and finally, student advisory boards. In the high school, this is the Student Lighthouse team, and we are working on building level student lighthouse teams this year. Goal 2 is on culture and student wellness. In culture in this area, we have our differentiated professional learning team consisting of teachers and administrators is meeting this goal. Our Big Ideas Summit is being worked on by our student group with our consultant, Mike Nicholson. The diversity audit is taking place right now, or as just finished up, we're in phase 2 of that diversity work. Student mental health and social emotional leader, currently Jen Aldrich, along with a team of trauma champions, are supporting this work, focusing on supporting student staff mental health, as well as the work of our social emotional interventionists. In goal 3, information and communication, we have an information and communications leader, the data leader, This position of recovery coordinator that was funded with ESSER 2 and 3 this year and last has been renamed to MTSS and data coordinator. This position is funded in the WSESU budget for next year. That position is currently held by Brittany Preston. Progress reporting on the strategic plan. We are reporting on the plans at the SU board meetings as part of our schedule that we implemented this year. We need to develop a progress report next. Student interest collection, and finally, a communications review, which is part of our equity audit process. And when the communications leader position is created and filled, that review will go deeper, I suspect. The plans that inform our COVID response are the recovery plan and the ARP ESSER 3 plan. They're related to each other very closely. They both serve to help our students and systems recover from the impact of the pandemic and to help us be more responsive in the future if we should find ourselves facing a similar circumstance. The recovery plan was required for all school systems in Vermont in June 2021, and the ARP ESSER 3 plan was required for all school systems in Vermont in June 2022. 2021, and we updated it in March of 2022. It'll be updated and revised this spring, and you can find both those plans on our website. So this slide shows the 3 goal areas of the strategic plan along the top. Beneath that are the investments described in the recovery plan and in the ARP ESSER 3 plan, and it shows how they align in that goal area. For the most part, the ARP ESSER 3 plan reflects the same priorities outlined in the recovery plan. Investments described in the recovery plan that address student success and engagement are, in the plan itself, it's called the engagement and truancy section. Those include reduced class sizes, the Leader in Me student leadership, mental health supports, summer academy, and transitional kindergarten. The ARP ESSER 3 plan includes all of those things, as well as a few other things like the Vermont Regional Special Education Collaboration and a behavioral data collection tool, as well as funding the position of the DEI coordinator. As it turns out, when we support student academic success and engagement, we are also supporting a healthy school culture and student wellness. Those arrows indicate that it's the same interventions and strategies that we are using. Finally, we're using all of these things to improve our multi-tiered system of supports with improved data collection practices that align to Leader in Me. We have also made investments to improve our internet access across the system. The new addition that we have not put in the ARP ESSER 3 plan yet is the purchase of materials to update programs in K-8 math and ELA. We're currently piloting Eureka 2.0, and next month we start a pilot in the ELA program. Amplify CKLA, and through a commingling of funding sources through our Consolidated Federal Programs Grant, Title I, and through the ARP ESSER 3 grant, we will be providing those materials for our schools. The Continuous Improvement Plan is a plan that is required for our Consolidated Federal Program. We kept our Continuous Improvement Plan very simple. I did a presentation on this in September of 2022, and also I think in August we talked about it as well. The Continuous Improvement Plan identifies the strategies we have placed in place to support the work of the entire system, but the focus is on how we support student learning and improve student learning for students at risk. So there are 2 areas of the Continuous Improvement Plan that align with our strategic plan goals: academic achievement, and our goal in this area is that we will have our students go from 56% to 79% meeting or exceeding proficiency on a Track My Progress Reading Foundational Assessment by May 2023. And then in our Safe and Healthy Schools goal, we will go from no implementation of Leader in Me to Core 2 implementation by June 2023, as measured by our MRA and self-assessment rubric. We do not, when we're writing these goals, we start at the beginning, even though last year we were making some progress on this goal. So what are our funding sources that combine together to support all the work of our strategic plan and the other plans I mentioned. This slide shows most of our non-special ed grant allocations. So this is ARP ESSER 3. Note this is ESSER 2, and that grant has been expensed for FY22 and FY23. Our title funding for Windsor, Heartland, and Wethersfield School is that amount for FY23. That includes carryover, things that weren't money that wasn't spent in FY21 and 22. And then our Title II funding for the SU is that amount. Accountability measures. We have accountability to our grants through reporting, but we also have accountability for our plans. In the ARP ESSER 3 plan, the following can be found. An LEA must engage in meaningful consultation with stakeholders and give the public an opportunity to provide input in the development of its plan. Stakeholders include students, families, principal and school leaders, other educators, school staff and their unions, as well as tribes, civil rights organizations, stakeholders representing the interests of children with disabilities, English learners, students experiencing homelessness, students in foster care, and other underserved students. Methods of stakeholder engagement vary widely across our small SU. We have public board meetings, we have advisory councils to the superintendent. We have 4 of those: a parent advisory council, a faculty advisory council, a support staff advisory council, and a student advisory council. We also have information posted on our websites, our superintendent newsletter, and this year we are engaging in Moving the Vision Forward, a community forum series that we are having our 3rd meeting on February 7th. If you haven't attended that, I highly recommend it as we continue to do the work of developing our vision and mission and moving that work forward. We are also working with faculty and students on those same days during the school day to create and expand self-determined learning opportunities for our students. Building-based opportunities, our administrators and our teachers and our staff keep us informed of the things that are coming up for you, and these are opportunities for our community to engage in the conversation. So at the end of this, there will be opportunity for questions. I just want to say thank you very much for supporting the work of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. My office is over the Mascoma Bank on Main Street in Windsor, and you can reach me at the following. Thank you.
I just want to thank you, Angie. That was a really good overview of what is it that is going on in our school district. But it was also presented, I felt, in a way that community and stakeholders could understand. And I don't know if this is something that can go on our website, but I think it would be very valuable for it to go on our website. So when I tell someone, you know, you want to know about our strategic plan, we can point to that. But I do want to thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Elizabeth?
Thank you. I'm not going to turn on my microphone this time. I have a couple of questions, Angie. Okay. I noticed that there was no mention of staff and teacher wellness. Is that part of the strategic plan at all?
Yes.
Where does that fall under?
Culture and student wellness. We really should call it culture and student and staff wellness, but
We sometimes refer to it that way. It's just not written that way.
I mean, in that there's an investment for the portrait of a WSESU member. There's the professional learning one where we do more job-alike more job-alike groups so they can learn from each other, that sort of thing, more opportunities for people to work together in job-alike groups. I think are some of the strategies that we have in that. Yeah, I think.
So is our, I guess, is our supervisory union providing any mental health care for our teachers?
So they have access to EAP.
Right.
Through Visbit. I know in some schools within the SU, actually, they've all done it. Try to engage in restorative practice, restorative circles, which is a healing method that we found beneficial. And in one school does it at every staff meeting. They start with a circle up. Just really, I know the lead learners keep a pulse on their staff and support them in whatever challenges they're experiencing, and those vary depending on the staff member and the situations at hand. But it is something we take very seriously. We know our workforce is stressed. And that is across the state and across the country. And so we really need to think about ways that we can keep our teachers, right? Keep our teachers doing what they do best and caring about our kids and making, creating the conditions where everybody can be successful. And so whatever we can take off their plates is what we try to do, give them time, because time is really critical for the work that they're doing. We know the pressures on them are, have evolved as society has changed. And so schools are being asked to be mental health caregivers themselves for students. So it's an issue. I mean, the things we're thinking about are really making sure when we're onboarding new staff, we have a very comprehensive plan for that. Making sure we're being very responsive to their needs, creating check-ins along the way, making sure that we're spreading out all of the training that they are required to take over the course of a year, even 2 years we've talked about, and just really creating cultures where there's trust.
I have two very little questions.
Sure.
One is, what does CFP stand for?
Consolidated Federal Programs. So it's Titles 1, 2, 3, but we don't qualify for that. We don't have a large enough ELL, English learners population, and then Title 4. And you, just to clarify, you mentioned in Title I funds that they were being used by Heartland, Weathersfield, and Windsor. Is West Windsor in that mix or no? So no, West Windsor does not qualify for title funding. Okay. Weathersfield is in a targeted program, which means it's only for a specific number of students, targeted students, makes sense. And then Heartland and Windsor have a school-wide program. So I was able to purchase math and language arts materials for Heartland and Windsor. And I will be using ESSER funds to purchase for Weathersfield and Albert Bridge School. And I just wanted to add, one of our motivations for getting these curriculum materials in, even though we'll have a very differentiated rollout for this, is to actually support our teachers rather, in having strong curriculum materials that require overall less preparation.
Should relieve some stress.
Should help relieve some stress.
Thank you.
Caitlin Gould.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple questions. One kind of stemmed off of what Christine was just talking about with the mental health support for our teachers, but also wondering if question that kind of goes in hand, I guess, with Angie's presentation as well, is part of that is the mental health and recovery of our youth and teachers post pandemic. I see a lot of funds going into different types of academic programming and curriculum based things. Has there ever been any thought or input around connecting the gap between school and community to help assist with some of those mental health barriers that are in the way? I think as parents and as educational professionals, we all have a basic understanding of if a child's basic needs aren't met, they're not available to learn. So we can put all the money into different curriculum avenues, but if these basic needs of these kiddos along with their mental health aren't being met, are these curriculums going to be of a benefit for them? And same with teachers too. You know, we're adding an extra layers onto these teachers with having to care for the mental health of these students. Is there professionals that we can use to help support that and take that off the teachers' plates?
We do have several investments in the ARP ESSER 3 plan. That includes mental health clinicians, school-based mental health clinicians, as well as We Are Hope anxiety coaching for students. That's just a few of them. We have been exploring ideas for different things to do for staff mental wellness. It is a little bit more challenging to find things that have been approvable. So that is still in our plan, though.
Some of the work, Caitlin, a great question. By the way, thank you for bringing that up. Some of the work that we're doing around self-determined learning and empowering our kids through the Leader in Me framework, we know that when we give kids some autonomy and, you know, they have some competency and relatedness, that does impact their overall mental health. So that's just another angle that we're going at to help with those issues that we know are that have grown significantly. They were there before the pandemic and now they're exacerbated.
Thank you.
Rebecca?
I don't know. I know in the past we've talked about different opportunities for staff. And I know that most schools offer a teacher's room or teacher's faculty office. I'm just wondering if we want to seriously consider having a timeout space for teachers. We have it for kids, you know, we have it for, you know, students who just need that space, who just need to go away and not be around. And I'm just wondering if that's something that can be thrown out, and it would be a special place for teachers, and it would not only have a chair and a desk, but maybe other comforting creature things that would make them sort of like, you know, feel like maybe there's someplace else in a good place for a short amount of time. But why not? We do it for students. Why can't we do it for staff? And this would be separate and apart from them. You know, it's like we go to Teachers Lounge. We know what that's like, but this can be a space where they can go by themselves and just, you know, hang out for a short amount of time.
It's a great suggestion, Rebecca. And we do encourage our teachers, we call it, if you need to tap out, you let us know, and we provide coverage because everybody gets to that point sometimes. But that's a great suggestion. I'm writing it down. Space is a hot commodity in our schools. I'm gonna tell you that right now. There's not a lot of open spaces, but we can be creative.
Davis?
Yeah, Christine, I was glad to hear you bring up Leader in Me in the context of you know, mental health and well-being. I guess I'm just curious, based on what I've heard about the results that we're already seeing from that and where that rollout is going over the next year or so. I know from work that I've done outside of the school setting that there are correlations between psychological safety, engagement, and collective leadership cultures. So I'm genuinely curious, and based on what you've shown us already, I'm pretty hopeful that will also contribute to you know, the mental health and well-being of our whole school community. So I'm glad that that's being considered, that sort of shift in kind of the cultural mental model in the school as part of that.
Yeah,
you know, it's all kind of a continuum.
It's all connected. Yeah.
Okay, we need to be moving on. It is 8:15 and we're now to items for discussion. So thank you. It's been a very informative so far. So first on items for discussion, we have the DEI coordinator update, and that is diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator. And we have Mary Gannon I hope Mary Ganning is still here.
I think she is.
Us in that conversation.
I just wanted to say publicly before Mary chimes in that our DEI coordinator, Ethan Lawrence, has stepped down from his position. He's resigned due to many factors. A big part of his decision was the part-time nature of the position and not having access to the staff and the students during the school day. That weighed into his decision and some personal things as well. So we are disappointed. We thank him for his work that he did provide for the SU in the few months that he was here. And we've been in touch with Mary on how to move this work forward in the best way possible. And she's here and she is our DEI consultant, just in case anybody doesn't know. She's been working with us for, I think this is year 2. And she's going to present some of our thinking around where we go. So Mary, I will be quiet and let you speak.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for giving us the time to talk a little bit about the diversity, equity, and inclusion effort that's been rooting in the district for some time now. I don't want to take a lot of time because I know you have a few other items, but I wanted to start off with an appreciation to the board and the school staff, the admin team, Christine, teachers, community members, all the folks who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but I know that there has been a great deal of energy and thinking and wisdom that's already coming into the district, that's already been there, certainly before I was there, and certainly in this moment. So I just, again, recognizing that this body of work that we talk about, the body and practice of diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, there's a lot of language that gets used to describe this. It's really important work and it can be challenging. And I think, in light of some of the lessons that I will certainly say I learned upon Ethan's departure, but I think also the leadership team and other folks who have been part of that conversation are recognizing that this is a really good moment to pause and think about what are some of the structures, other opportunities that we can develop in the district to really operationalize this work so that we can really be sure that whoever we bring in into that position is really set up for success, and that the district itself is really set up for success. One thing that I want to say on the outset is, as for those of us who are in education right now, we know we're in some challenging moments, and certainly there's an ongoing debate and conversation statewide, regionally, nationally about the value of bringing diversity, equity, inclusion into public education. And what I want to say is it's already been there. The conversations that we are struggling with around history and literature and math through an equity lens, those lived experiences of the people who have not been centered in our curriculum, whether it's our students or our family, community members, and certainly I would say the curriculum that we often see in our schools, those challenges have been there. And I feel like our work now is to really think about how do we create learning opportunities in a learning community where all of our children and all of our staff and all of our community members feel like they can bring their full selves to this work. And that includes everyone. I always say that anything involving equity is good for everyone, that we're not just trying to benefit particular communities or people who have been historically marginalized, that this work benefits all of us. So when I sat with the leadership team a couple weeks ago, we realized that it was a good opportunity to pause and just to think about how we want to reevaluate how we got to this moment. Ethan was very gracious and shared some of his own experiences with us as well. But we also realized that there were some pieces that needed to be strengthened and put into place to really make sure that we set the next person who comes through up for success. So I want to share a little bit of those with you. And sometimes what I think is important is understanding, and I know for the educators on the call and for other staff, you're really like every day dealing with all this emerging issues, dilemmas potentially, or challenges that involve issues of diversity and equity. So you're really in the moment in these individual scenarios. A lot of us tend to be at this 30,000-foot view, which is really thinking structurally and institutionally about the full district. And so one of the things I will touch on when I get to this board piece is I would really encourage the board, and I think I started some of these conversations with some of you, or most of you, last year. We had a couple of board sessions to really think about what is your work as a school board around bringing an equity lens, and what are some of the things that you need to be exploring in your work as board members, and I'll come back to that. But as we think about the district, as a whole, and understanding that that we all have a different part in how we engage with this work and in different ways. So one of the things that I like to always say is that within this district, and I work in a lot of districts in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, most districts, this one included, has already an understanding of their core values. So there's a set of core values or beliefs about how WSCSU does business, how you deliver education, how you treat each other, workplace culture norms and values. And I think the important thing is beginning to look at those again and think about how equity and inclusion are aligned with those core values. Because oftentimes we will talk about ourselves or our organizational culture as one that's committed to anti-racism or diversity. And then what we begin to see is that even though the core value speaks to that particular idea of respect or inclusion, what we're actually seeing play out, whether it's in a school or a particular school or interactions with families, whatever it might be, are not actually living out that core value. And so sometimes it can be helpful to do some of that realignment just to see how is it that we're matching those. And so in my short time that I've been with the district, what I'm really seeing is there's some very powerful core values that we want to continue to align with the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what I would share to the board is, as I said, I think we started some of those conversations last year, and I know that there's a new election coming up. So I see this as a great opportunity with the new board members post-election season to really spend some time building your conversation, your own group cohesion, your board cohesion around what is your equity lens look like? What is your vision and mission? And we started to do some of that by looking at a common vocabulary. And what I would encourage the board to think more about is these different places where you have, where your spheres of influence are. So one of them is your own vision and how you would, what are the protocols that you would use from that particular DEI framework to inform how you do policy work. And I was starting to hear some of that tonight in some of the presentations. So thinking about your work as a board is around policy and how can you infuse the policy conversations and the policy decisions with a DEI framework. The other part that I see as part of the board work, which will really support the district, is building conversations and developing conversations in the community. So how do we, in the community, how does the board and other folks who are stakeholders in that think about important conversations that need to happen with the community? And I think the equity audit will be a really great entree into how we bring a conversation to the community when we roll out the equity plan steps and recommendations. And then again, because I think this is different kind of work than maybe talking about funding or grants or the budget or the school calendar, is in order for you all to support what your staff and faculty and other folks in the district are doing around diversity and equity, is develop your own cohesion as a board. How are you working together, talking with each other, recognizing that there will be a range of perspectives? There already are, and there will probably be more of that. after the election. So building your own timeline, building your own goals, and getting some clarity as a board, I think could be really important, and helps you get a greater understanding of the roles. I have a couple more pieces. The other piece that the admin team, leadership team, and I have talked about is really thinking about how do we continue working on developing a community of practice. One of the things that I take responsibility for, and I know Christine and I have talked about this, that I feel like I dropped the ball on, I think part of it is things are moving so quickly, is I never had a real chance to talk with the leadership team and the other administrators around some of the foundational understandings of diversity and equity in schools, or just to get a sense of who are the leadership folks in the schools who are already doing this work or are comfortable with it, where are folks at who need more support, so that when the equity coordinator comes in to start developing relationships with people in the buildings, there's an understanding of what the level of awareness and knowledge is, so that we're not setting people up. So it wouldn't, and this didn't happen, but the fact is that we haven't had some opportunities to talk with admin, and I'm going to be coming in to do that, I think, in a couple of weeks, near the beginning or middle of February. And just to have a conversation about what does it mean in their particular leadership roles. The other part of that is with the teacher DEI committee, which is a really important and another foundational structure that you have in this district, which is really wonderful. I was, comparing to some other places where I am right now, there's some really important structures that can begin to really operationalize this. And that teacher DEI committee, I think, can really build relationship with the equity coordinator and get some clarity around what is their role with the equity coordinator, and begin to take some of the recommendations from the audit, but also some from the work that was done with Melissa Crum a way back. I know the Anti-Racism Task Force and that committee was doing some really important work and pulled out a lot of recommendations. So, there are different compositions of people within the district who can be relying on each other and leaning on each other as this work gets rolled out. And there's a lot of pieces that I think are already in place, particularly I think of that work, from the work of Melissa Crum and those steps. The equity coordinator, I think the posting, I think this is public, we're looking at July start. And so a lot of what we're talking about in the leadership team and with admin is what does it mean to really be preparing for onboarding a full-time person. And I think the other decision that got made, which I think is really important, is that whoever comes into that job will be answering to the superintendent. And that was, again, I think another piece that we had not had a real chance to think about and get clarity on, because in every district that I work in, it's very different. And I think in this district, given the setup and the leadership structure, and also we recognize that bringing in new equity coordinators into school districts is really a high stakes, it's an opportunity, and there's also some high stakes connected to that. We want to really make sure that that equity coordinator has connection to the person who is leading the district. And I feel really strongly about that. And I think that was a solid decision that that Christine and I, talked about, and she's, that will be part of the way the job gets posted. The last thing that I would say to you all is that I got to spend a little bit of time with the visioning session, the strategic plan visioning session on December 5th. I was invited in by the consultant on that, and did a little bit of bringing in that equity diversity lens to that process. And I think there's a lot of, again, opportunity. Sorry, my dog is being a little annoying. There's a great opportunity in the strategic planning process to begin to think about how we infuse these ideas into that work as well, so that it doesn't become seen as an add-on, but it's really the framework that the strategic plan process is working from. And, I'm happy to talk with you more about that, and I'm sure I'll be talking with the leadership team about it. But I do think that one of the things that happens sometimes is the ideas of diversity and equity get sort of compartmentalized or put on part of the list of things that will happen. And what I would encourage you to do, and it will make the work much easier, is if it's really flowing as part of the strategic plan process, so that everything that's being thought about, is really part of the strategic plan and how that gets rolled out. Let's see, I'm just going through my notes to see if there's anything else. I think I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions. I do want to say again that one thing I would also safeguard you against, and I think about this from someone who works at the state level on this work, who I really respect. She was talking recently about how a lot of times what she sees in agencies and organizations is they keep creating subgroups and or other committees. And I would say, or bringing in other people to do pieces of this work. You have great resources available to you, and some really amazing people already that just need some tools and some skill set, some support and building some skill sets around how this gets rolled out. So, as I think about, like, for example, all the beautiful work that came out of the Melissa Crum, exploration and all those recommendations, I've been poring over those. And I think we can take a lot of that work and begin to think about how that gets infused in some of the other places where people are ready to do it. So I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions or other thoughts.
Rebecca?
Thank you, Mary. And I appreciate it. You mentioning Melissa Crum, that group that worked with Melissa. And I personally feel sad that we just stopped meeting, because it was a group that really talked about issues and continued to delve in issues that around questions that topics that were really hard to talk about.
Yeah.
And, that not having that, I think that in some regard we missed an opportunity there. But my hope is that we can consider bringing that group back. And it was a combination of community members, board members, staff members. So it really tried to take in all stakeholders. And so I hope that we would consider bringing them back. The other piece you mentioned was, which I didn't know, you talked about a DEI committee of teachers. I didn't know that existed, or did I just not hear right?
And I hope I described it correctly. But yes, there is a committee within the district of staff and educators who are championing this work and thinking about how they're going to move forward. I think taking some of the action steps from the outcomes of I keep calling it the Melissa Crum work, but I think we know what we're talking about. And then to think about what their capacity is, and given their particular roles. So that's a group that I'm understanding is meeting once a month. I'm meeting with them at their next meeting, which I believe is the end of February. Katie asked me to come at the end of February. And I do want to say something quickly, Rebecca, because I don't want to disregard the anti-racist, the work of that committee and how important. And I'm sure there were some amazing, champions and thinkers, who really committed to that. I also know that sometimes what happens is, because of the evolution of this kind of work, that districts or organizations will start with a group like that, and then they disband only because some of those folks are being engaged with it in different ways in another part of the district, right? So some of those folks, and I think some of this is bandwidth, like how much can people be involved in terms of committee work. And I would also say to you, that doesn't mean there wouldn't be an opportunity for some group such as that composition to come back. I mean, if there's community stakeholders, parents, I would love to see something along those lines. And the other thing I just want to say quickly, the teacher DEI committee, I think, is essential. And I'm working in Hartford right now, and there's a really strong one there. And one of the reasons why they felt it was important to just do it, to have the composition just be staff and teachers, is there things that they're talking about they don't feel like they could talk about in front of board members, for example. Like, they're really wrestling with different kinds of issues that, that there's a certain level of vulnerability, and they want to be able to figure out how to navigate that. And then maybe, connect with board members at some point. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
We look forward to hearing from you again. Okay, moving on to update on students on the board. Christine, you had.
Yep, I'll be quick. What I had happened for next steps was for Brian to take the idea to his board in Wethersfield, and for Lindsay Perkins, the principal at Heartland, to take the idea of students on the local boards to her board. Brian discussed it with the Wethersfield board in January, and I think it's a great idea. So he's going to base his process on the Mount Scottney process and put it out to students. And Lindsay will take the idea to the Heartland board. So spoiler alert, Heartland board members, you'll hear about this at the meeting. I think it's in a week. And so once that's in place, I think we talked about drawing from those kids for the potential WSESU student.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So more to come.
Great. Elizabeth.
I've got a question for you. And that is, as a member of the Vermont School Board Association Regional
Yes.
Board. Can you find out whether, how we can make it possible for, because it has to be an organizational decision, how we can make it possible for students to gain access to board training if they are official members of boards? If they're appointed by the board, they're official members of the board, and they should have access to the VSBA trainings. And also, I have a question for you, and that is that, can you come up with some board training? And I'd be glad to help. I have some materials pulled already for people that,
For new board members.
New board members, but I think it's kind of important.
As I do as well through
You got it.
VSBA.
Yeah. So. There's that great video on education funding.
I know, I watched that recently. It's actually not bad. It's still complicated.
Okay, thank you. Just write that down. Okay, moving on, staff, children benefit follow-up.
Yep, I can report out on that. So I did speak with legal counsel Pedro Len, and I asked him the question. And his advice is that he strongly discourages the practice of having staff members who live in different towns being able to bring their own children to WSESU, and I'll share his rationale. First and foremost, that would be considered a taxable benefit and subject to the collective bargaining agreement, because essentially students are being able to come into our district, and the tuition cost would be a benefit to that staff member. That would be an unfair practice, as many people in the workforce do not benefit from that or would not benefit from that. So we cautioned on that. He said we could not claim the ADM, or the average daily membership, which would be an increased cost to the SU. More students, and we're not being, those don't count in our equal as pupil. And his advice or recommendation was that if we did take in students, we would become the LEA, and there would be no reimbursement from the state or costs if there's special education needs for those students who come into the district. We would be responsible for those costs. And so he essentially broke it down into a really, he said he understands why, but he does say he did kind of put it simply, if you're trying to keep an employee that costs this much money and it costs this much money to educate this student, it'll be a cost to the district. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Did you happen to ask the
I have
follow-up
not
questions?
spoken with him since we chatted yet.
Okay,
but
so
if
my
you wanna-
follow-up questions are, if it is a taxable benefit, then why does it not become part of the ADM?
Right, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him about that.
And that is why the student would become part of the LEA. And I mean, if the student becomes part of, if we become the LEA, then that's because the student is part of our ADM. That's number one.
It doesn't work that way. ADM is based upon Vermont law. And so that's why,
if they're paying tuition or if they're paying taxes on it, then it's a tuition-based benefit. And as such, they should be part of the ADM.
So if students, for example, at Sharon who tuition to Hartford does not get those students ADM. Sharon gets those students ADM. Okay. So ADM is assigned to resident district. It is not assigned to the education school.
Well, no, because
Yes.
because it's based on who's paying the taxes for the tuition. And if we are paying the taxes for the tuition, then
It is not based upon who's paying taxes for the tuition. It is based upon residential. Legally, it's based upon the headboard of the guardian's bed. I mean, that's how antiquated it is. Yeah. So no, it's based upon residence. And so it is a convoluted system, and I do all the reportings on it, but it would become a taxable income tax for the parent. And we would not be, no. I mean, Pietro's right. That's just how it's set up in Vermont law.
So then my other question is, do we not have other benefits that not everybody benefits from? I mean, for example, maternity leave. It's available because it's,
I mean, we do, staff use their sick days.
Yeah.
But there's family medical leave that
yeah.
is allowed the same thing. So if we have, let's say the dad works here and mom works for some other total different company, they have the opportunity to take leave to be with mom and child.
Yeah.
And I think it's my understanding they can use up to 6 weeks of their sick time, and then if there are complications, they can take up to 12, 6 of them paid, 6 of them unpaid if they have 6 weeks worth of sick time. So yeah, I mean, depending on if you're sick or not, or if you
have children.
Or if you have children or not.
Or
yeah.
if,
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I think we have some benefits that are for the greater good, that don't benefit everybody. And I think it could be argued that this is one of those. And I can see the argument against that as well, but we as a society have benefits that don't benefit everybody because they're.
I would say,
just saying,
I hear you. I would love to be able to offer this to staff. I tend to want to recommend that we follow our legal advisor's advice.
I think one follow-up question I have, and this to expand our housing base, okay, to be able to offer that benefit to anyone who lives within the SU.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
a fair question.
And so that takes care of a lot of the LEA issues, is because by law, special ed is based within an SU. And so that would be a follow-up question, is that what sort of downfalls would it be?
Yeah, and that's definitely something to consider. I mean, we have an intra-district policy right now, Bill, on the books, and the procedures that go with that policy. Really, it's used in situations where you have a student who's really been in crisis, struggling. The school has tried to put interventions in place.
Right. I'm aware of all that, but when we start negotiating if we find out when we start the next contract negotiating, because this is also a contract issue, if we want to offer the benefit so that teachers don't necessarily have to go through that policy to have their child go to the school that they teach at, that would at least extend housing opportunities for SU staff and to allow them to have their children within the same building that they work in. There are other issues to work out with that, but at the same time, I believe that would take care of a lot of the legal issues around funding and so forth. Because basically what would happen is, say a parent lives in Wethersfield, but they teach at Windsor, Wethersfield will not lose that ADM because this child goes to Windsor. So that is a little more expensive, Windsor, but at least Windsor doesn't bear the risk of a large special ed bill.
Would the board like me to ask Pietro that question? And is that part of negotiations in the next round?
I think this would have to be part of negotiations to work it out within the contract. But before we take that step, we have to really find out what are the legal ramifications within a inter-SU. Probably have to be a policy, and within the contract, allowing staff to have their children go to the school in which they work at.
Okay, I'll follow up on that.
Yep, that
I'll
was
follow
also,
up on your question.
That
too,
had
so-
also been on the list of things that we talked about.
Okay. Rebecca?
I was just, Christine, when you mentioned that Pietro had commented on the potential financial implications, I think that it's really important that we look at that, because we need to look at whether our town is willing to take on those additional financial costs. And I'm not saying that they won't, but I think that if this is part of what ends up happening, there's going to need to be a really good presentation to the town to inform them that this is in our best interest. It's not about just keeping teachers, but if they're going to have to pay more money, then you're going to have to really share with them, why are you paying more money? So your comment about it's the, Pietro's consultation is really important, what he's saying in terms of there are many implications to what you potentially are doing, and one of them is financial, and we as a board need to pay attention to that piece also.
Thank you, Rebecca. Davis?
Yeah, I first want to second what Rebecca just said. I think that just communicating that if we choose to go in that direction, we definitely want to have a community conversation. Also, Larry is right in my line of vision, has had his hand raised for a while, so I want to make sure it got passed
No,
on.
I think Bill spoke to what I was gonna say, is that as an SU, it's a lot cleaner inside the SU
Yeah.
from a financial perspective. So that being said, I think it would be great to provide this for people outside the SU too, if it was possible. Because I support this idea. The question I would have for Pietro would be, Jeff Francis from the VSA said that other school districts do this. How are they getting around the taxable benefit to the employee?
Pietro, I asked that. Pietro said there may be a few SUs that it's a long-standing practice, and he's advised them to stop it.
Okay.
But that's what he said.
Hmm.
I don't know if they listen to him, but.
Well, I'm interested to hear what Pietro has to say about, expanding within the SU too, because, like Larry said, I think, several of us feel if we can do this, it would be fantastic to do it. But, we gotta clearly be careful and, really understand what the legal ramifications are if we decide to move.
Yeah, and he put it simply, and I don't mean to minimize it at all. He said, if you're trying to keep an employee, which we are, we value our teachers greatly, and it's a $60,000 cost. And by doing that, you incur the cost of students that need more, that could cost you $100,000, or I don't know what a realistic amount for that would be. Are you willing to incur that? And you just never know, right?
Yeah, and if it's that too, and you're adding like 1.5 FTE per student that could potentially be out of the district, which, is a consideration.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will follow up and ask him about the legal ramifications around expanding the housing base to anyone who lives in the SU being able to bring their child. And I will ask if it's a taxable benefit, why does it not become part of the ADM?
Okay, thank you. Caitlin Gould.
Thank you, Amy. Just a couple questions around this. I know, a couple of years ago when we were doing the Act 64 and the restructuring of the district, there were two school regions that opted out of the Mount Escutney School District, and that was Wethersfield and Heartland. And I'm just trying to get some clarification if this is more around, teachers outside of the WSE wanting to bring their students, their children into these Students of Windsor, or if it's teachers of outside communities from the district wanting to bring their students in. I know that there's already a policy for and a procedure for if students are out of district wanting to come to Windsor, and there's criteria that needs to go through, and it goes to committee to decide if these students can be accepted out of district. I think that when the restructuring of the district happened, Windsor already took, there was already financial implications of that with Windsor losing students that, and families that wanted to have school choice, to go to Springfield, to go to Hartford, to go to Woodstock, to go to these other, Lebanon, even across the border. So I think really taking into consideration what these financial implications are going to be now with bringing these students in, and what that impact is going to be on Windsor and West Windsor residents within our district when these other two areas made the choice as communities that they didn't want to have that benefit. It's really, I feel having community input on that is going to be really, really, really important, so that they have an understanding of what is happening, because financially, we as members are going to feel that burden.
Kayla, can I clarify? So the question is, if you are a staff member in our SU, so a teacher or support staff or maintenance staff or kitchens to any staff member, and you live in another town outside of our SU, like you teach in Windsor, but you live in Claremont.
Or you teach in Heartland, or you teach in Wethersfield or West Windsor. It's not just here in Windsor.
Right, and any school, thank you, Amy, in our SU. The question is, can you bring your children with you to work, to go to our schools, one of our schools? So it's staff members who live in a different community than the communities in Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union. I don't know what that is.
Nancy, can you mute yourself, please?
It's Nancy's clock. Yeah.
Nancy,
So just to sort of clarify about students who live in Heartland and live in Wethersfield and tuition out to Hartford, Hanover, Claremont, those school districts, Wethersfield and Heartland, still receive those students' ADM. Okay. And so, granted, we don't get their, within the SU don't get their high school students. At the same time, we are still their LEA. One of, I believe Pietro has been conservative in his criticism of this, and to understand the lines of the risks. I'll go through this, in which if we allow this to happen, if we do this, then basically we can never then again say no to allowing a student of a parent who works to go into our district. And so basically, if a parent lives in Claremont, they work for an SU school, they have a student in which it's not unrealistic for them to have a annual price tag of $100,000. The other thing is that when we accept that student, we also then accept the legal risk as parent pro. What is it, Christine?
In loco parentis.
In loco, yeah, parentis. So that then we would, if we went into litigation, then we would bear the entire cost of the litigation with absolutely no financial benefit of the residential, the residential location of the student. It just opens up a school district and an SU to a huge amount of risk that's going to be very difficult to justify to the taxpayers of the towns. And I have a hard time overstating that, because it really is a huge risk. It's a great idea, but the risk is really extreme for the benefit. That's just my take on it.
And
Kristen, thank you for your clarification on that, and Bill, thanks for reiterating that as well. I appreciate that.
And just to clarify, I also agree with all of these. I just want all of the information.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And, oh my gosh, it's 9 o'clock. Yes. Okay, so we have policy review, which in the hour that it is, we
can move it. If you think that's wise.
I think we should.
I'm sorry?
No.
Should?
I think we should move it to the next meeting.
Okay.
That's what we were saying.
When you said, I think we should, I'm like, should.
Sorry, she switched. Move it to the next meeting.
Yeah. I do want to point out that I sent a paragraph from the substitute teacher policy. The last paragraph, there's some conflicting information. I rewrote it and sent it to you, Christine.
Yep.
Because the conflicting information is based upon that the substitute teacher will be paid wages determined by the superintendent. And then the last sentence, it says wages for daily substitutes will be approved by the WSEAU. My paragraph cleans everything up and still gives you the superintendent the ability to make adjustments based upon planning and so forth. So kind of it's the same thing I've been bringing up for the last 3 times we read it. I just
did. So Bill, you sent me those. I wrote them out. Is it not corrected in the policy that's posted in the portal? I can check.
Yes, it's not correct. Yeah.
It's
I mean,
not correct.
basically what happened is it's a sentence at the end was added, which clarifies it, but it contradicts the first sentence. And so I cleaned it up so there's no contradiction.
And you sent that back to me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we'll take it. And so we're postponing all of these readings until next month. So that's a good thing.
Correct. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So we are at items for action. Yes. First item we have is a resignation.
The board make a motion to accept the resignation of
And-
Ethan Lawrence.
Of Ethan Lawrence. If, I'll take a motion to accept the resignation of Ethan Lawrence.
So moved.
Davis and seconded by Nancy.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? I know we talked about this at length as far as how to
Proceed,
how to proceed, so. I will start online this time with our voting. Anne Marie?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Colleen Spence?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Elizabeth? Aye. And we accept his resignation with a lot of regret.
Thank
Yes,
you.
and we wish him well and to still be part of our community conversation.
Thank you.
Let me see. Oh, we already agreed on the addition of a special meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So that one is done. Policy adoption, no. We are setting the next agenda. And our next meeting for February is the interviews.
Right. So this would be the March agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And that March, oh my gosh,
That's also the reorganization one.
yeah, March.
Yep.
The March meeting is reorganization. So it's the 27th, so that gives all the
Wow.
boards the opportunity to meet and have their reorganization. So March 27th, reorganization and policies.
I will just move what's on today to March for the policy work.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Okay.
And the update on superintendent.
So on our plan for the year, February was going to be the special education report by Katie, and March was going to be the data update by Brittany. So we can certainly adjust accordingly. Being short, how short do you think it can be?
Well, if
Or do
we
you want to
had,
split it?
yeah, that's probably best.
So we'll move
Because people
to March
like to ask
questions.
questions.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll do Katie will do the special ed report in March, yeah. And we'll move Brittany to April, and that'll be part of the CIA report.
being short, really.
The data.
Okay,
Okay,
All right.
I'll let her know.
and that will be a full meeting.
Yep. Okay.
And let me see, do we need an executive session this evening? I want to thank everyone. We had some very interesting conversation and discussion. I think we learned a lot from all of our discussion. So thank you for coming this evening, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Elizabeth and Nikki?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. So all those in favor can leave the meeting.
All right, I'm gonna stop the recording. All those in favor, goodbye. That's one voting with your feet, right?